Watching these early episodes again makes me remember some of the reasons I became a brony in the first place, and I started to notice a lot of little things that I hadn't thought of before. I have to say that the Ticketmaster is an ideal follow-up episode to the first two-parter story. While we were introduced to the strengths that each of the main six represents when they defeat Nightmare Moon, in the Ticketmaster we get to see some of their weaknesses. As the episode begins, we see that Twilight is helping Applejack in her chores. My first thought at seeing this was why Applejack had actually asked Twilight to help her with this when others might have been better suited for the task. And then later on we find out that Applejack did actually ask Rainbow Dash for help first, and Rainbow had turned her down. I also noticed that the Spike we see here seems a little less mature than the Spike of later seasons. Not only is he casually tossing apples that Twilight had been working to collect, he seems completely oblivious to the fact that Twilight might actually want the apple that he ends up eating himself. But even with a few moments of being insensitive, we still see that Spike is trying to help keep Twilight grounded when she is unsure of what to do later on. When the issue of the Grand Galloping Gala arises, we get to see the first bit of rivalry between Applejack and Rainbow Dash, which does show up again in a later episode, but I think the writers have stopped trying to explore the rivalry between these two characters, as we don't see much else beyond fall-weather friends. It is interesting to hear all the reasons that each of the main six come up with about attending the gala. Applejack's reasoning certainly seems to be the most selfless when compared to the others, but I have to wonder whether there might actually be more beneficial outcomes with some of the others as well. Like, for instance, if Rainbow Dash did manage to impress the Wonderbolts enough to the point of being accepted onto the team, then there may also be a great benefit to the whole of Ponyville if ponies across the land had found out that one of the star members of the Wonderbolts had lived there. Might actually become more of a tourist spot that way. Or even with Rarity, there is the possibility that if she married into the royal family that her boutique in Ponyville would get even more attention than it does now, which would also provide a benefit to the town. Of course, later on in the series, we find out that none of their fantasies about the gala happened quite as well as they would have expected. But at this point in the show, you could make the argument that there are further benefits than what some of the main six had presented to Twilight. Also in this episode, we have the first appearance of Angel Bunny, who right off the bat shows himself to be far more intelligent than any of the other animals that Fluttershy cares for. And he's actually trying to help Fluttershy get her chance to go to the gala, even though it doesn't seem that Fluttershy is planning to take Angel along. This first appearance seems a bit different from how we see Angel acting later on in the series, but I'll talk more about that when we come to those episodes. It's good to see the Ticketmaster as a direct follow-up to the Nightmare Moon arc, as this kind of episode simply wouldn't work so well later on in the series. It's apparent that each of the main six want to be friends with Twilight, but they don't seem to have much interest in being friends with each other, as of yet. So when we are seeing them bickering about who deserves a ticket, it feels much more natural and believable, as they really haven't yet developed their bonds with each other. And despite the fact that Twilight only recently discovered the magic of friendship, she is actually being quite mature in her decisions regarding the tickets. She is able to see through her friend's attempts to sway her opinion, and right from the start she really doesn't want to disappoint any of them. Something else I noticed here is the fact that when Twilight finds Fluttershy and her animals cleaning up the library, Fluttershy is actually singing the theme song for the show. And here I thought that Pinkie Pie is the one who is supposed to be breaking the fourth wall. But I think the most creative bit in this whole episode is when all the mares in Ponyville are chasing Twilight and Spike throughout the town. And of course this kind of chase scene is made all the more enjoyable with the Benny Hill theme playing in the background.
What are we gonna do? We're gonna...
I gotta hand it to the writers for all the creative bits they put into MLP that only the adults would recognize. One other thing I'd like to note here is that when Twilight manages to teleport Spike and herself away, that Spike looks rather disheveled when they arrive at the library. Makes me think that Twilight is still getting the hang of that spell, which is something I'll be talking more about in my next review. Once Twilight is finally able to confess her feelings to all her friends, they are finally able to understand how much stress they've been putting on Twilight. And one by one, they apologize to Twilight. And if you look closely here, you may notice the order in which they apologize. First is Applejack, followed by Fluttershy, then Pinkie Pie, Rarity, and finally, after some looks of disapproval, Rainbow Dash, which is the exact same order that their elements were presented in the Nightmare Moon episodes. Whether or not the writers did this intentionally, I don't know, but I'm still glad to see that honesty keeps coming up first. So, when Twilight sends a letter to the princess, refusing the 2 tickets as it would keep her from taking all her friends to the gala, we see another very mature moment from Twilight. Even from early on in the series, there are many times when Twilight seems to have a very good head on her shoulders. I'm actually glad to see the kind of lessons they come up with here, because it is simple enough for a child to understand but still relevant enough for even an adult to learn something new. But something else you may notice here is the fact that Celestia's reply came rather quickly. Again, almost as if she already had it written out. That she was hoping or even expecting Twilight would return the 2 tickets that she had sent earlier. And of course, that just begs the question as to why Celestia would only send 2 tickets in the first place. In this case, I get the feeling that Celestia was testing her student, wanting her to learn a specific lesson about friendship. I mean, why else would Celestia only send 2 tickets if she knew that Twilight had 5 friends? This seems more along the lines of Celestia trying to guide Twilight on her path to better understanding the magic of friendship. Overall, though, I actually enjoyed watching the Ticketmaster even more now than I did when I first started watching MLP. Seeing these characters when they are just starting to build their bonds with each other is quite fun, and when I'm re-watching these old episodes, I start to notice a lot of little things that I hadn't thought of before, which is also rather fun. What are your thoughts about the Ticketmaster? Do you think this episode is any better or worse from when you first started watching the show? Do you think that Celestia was intentionally testing Twilight with these tickets? I would like to hear your thoughts about this episode and the impact it has had on the main 6, and I look forward to bringing you many more episode reviews in the future. I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.